New York handles more passengers than any other airport system in the United States. In 2019, its three airports, JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia, processed 143 million people. That's more than the entire population of Russia passing through departure gates in a single city. And here's the paradox nobody discusses. The greatest metropolis of the West cannot build a new airport. Not from lack of money, not from lack of political will. The problem is more brutal than that. So what happens when a city that invented the solution of building more airports discovers that solution has simply run out? To understand the size of this impasse, you need to understand how New York got here. And the story is almost ironic. For nearly a century, the city did exactly what any rational city would do when an airport got overcrowded. It built another one. Newark opened in 1928 as the region's major commercial airport. 11 years later, when Newark was already saturated and flights delayed like trains during rush hour, the city opened LaGuardia in 1939. Less than a decade after that, in 1948, JFK emerged because two airports couldn't handle the volume. Each new airport was the obvious answer to a simple problem. The system worked like a pressure valve. When the pot whistled, you opened another one. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the binational agency managing all three airports, something like a parallel government of transportation, inherited this 20th century model. And for decades, it was brilliant. But here's the problem with brilliant models. They work until the day they stop working. When JFK was designed in the 40s, commercial aviation flew with piston engines. A Douglas DC-4 carried 44 passengers across the Atlantic in 17 hours. Today, a Boeing 777 takes 400 people from New York to London in less than 7. The infrastructure that was drawn for one era is supporting demand that its creators could not have imagined even in science fiction. And that's the trap of success. The more the system grows, the more it depends on a structure that cannot grow with it. Now, three axes explain why New York is cornered. The first is geographic. The second is political. The third is in the sky. Start with the ground. JFK sits in southeast Queens, squeezed between densely urbanized neighborhoods and Jamaica Bay, a federal environmental reserve where construction is prohibited. LaGuardia is literally compressed between dense residential streets in Queens and Flushing Bay. Its runways end in water. Newark, across the Hudson River, is surrounded by highways, industrial zones, and New Jersey residential neighborhoods. There's nowhere to push the walls. Compare this with Atlanta, where Hartsfield-Jackson has over 1,900 hectares of space with empty land around it, or Dallas-Fort Worth, built in farmland in the 1970s with room to double in size. New York has no such luxury. The available land simply doesn't exist within a usable distance from the city's economic center. It's like trying to expand an apartment in Copacabana. No matter how much money you have, the building next door won't move. That geographic wall led to decades of failed attempts. Since the 1960s, proposals emerged for a fourth major airport on practically any conceivable piece of land. Long Island, studied and rejected. Pinelands in New Jersey, blocked by environmental restrictions. In 1969, one proposal even suggested an artificial island in the Atlantic Ocean, a floating platform for jet aircraft, like an airborne aircraft carrier. None of these projects survived contact with reality. State and federal studies, repeated over 4 decades, reached the same conclusion. The political, environmental, and real estate costs made any new airport unfeasible. It's a hard ceiling, a concrete ceiling that no billion-dollar amount breaks through. And precisely because it cannot build new, New York is spending fortunes to squeeze every square meter out of the airports it already has. The JFK reconstruction program surpassed $19 billion. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire GDP of countries like Iceland or Cambodia. LaGuardia underwent the transformation of more than $8 billion. The old terminal, which then Vice President Joe Biden compared to a third-world airport, was demolished and rebuilt from scratch. Newark opened the new Terminal A in 2023, part of another multi-billion-dollar package. But here's the detail that changes everything. None of these investments creates a new airport. All of them attempt to extract more capacity from the same footprint. It's like renovating every room in a house to fit more people, knowing you'll never be able to build a second floor. And even if terminals get bigger and more modern, the most critical bottleneck is not on the ground, it's in the sky. New York's 3 airports share one of the most congested airspaces on the planet. Planes taking off from Newark can cross arrival routes from JFK. Approaches to LaGuardia pass just kilometers from departure trajectories from JFK. All of this is managed by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, which functions like a conductor trying to lead 3 orchestras on the same stage. Even with new terminals and extra gates, the number of landings and takeoffs per hour remains limited by the physics of approaches, the minimum distances required between aircraft, and the complexity of routes that intertwine like spaghetti on the map. On bad weather days, fog, storms, crosswinds, delays in New York spread through the entire American airline network like a virus. A thunderstorm at JFK at 2 p.m. can delay flights in Los Angeles at 8 p.m. It's the most expensive domino effect in global aviation. That's why for the first time in the city's history, the solution doesn't involve opening a new airport. The Port Authority, the FAA, Delta, United, and other operators are betting on something never attempted at this scale: growing without building. The bet includes modernizing air traffic control with satellite surveillance instead of radar, the equivalent of swapping a paper map for real-time GPS. It includes stricter management of slots, those time windows that determine when each plane can land or take off. It includes terminals designed not to have more gates, but to process more passengers per gate, like a factory that increases production without expanding the warehouse. It's a race against time. Demand for flights in New York is expected to exceed pre-pandemic levels and keep rising. If technology and efficiency don't keep pace, the system hits a breaking point where chronic delays start pushing airlines and passengers to other hubs. And cities like Atlanta, Dallas, and even Charlotte are watching from the sidelines, ready to absorb the traffic New York can't process. The rival is not standing still. The rival is building new runways while New York renovates the old ones. The greatest financial center of the Americas is making an unprecedented bet that it's possible to expand the largest airport system in the country without adding a single significant new runway. If it works, it becomes the model for every megacity in the 21st century facing the same dilemma. If it fails, New York may discover that the price of having no space is losing relevance, not all at once, but flight by flight, route by route, passenger by passenger. And nobody knows yet which of the 2 scenarios will win.